Welcome, my name's Chris and I'm back this week with part 2 of a lesson aimed at beginner and intermediate guitarists on my favorite chord voicings in the key of G. Last time I covered the 1, 4, and 5 chords, G, C, and D in the key of G, and this time I'm going to be covering the 2, 3, and 6 chords, which are A minor, B minor, and E minor. I would definitely watch part 1 if you have not. It will give you a sense on how I'm going through these, and I hope these voicings will be helpful and give you some new possibilities. This is by no means an exhaustive or definitive list. This is just some voicings that I commonly see played by myself and by other guitarists. Some real world voicings, if you will, with kind of a little bit more subtle and a little bit more developed sounds, more resonant sounds. That's generally what we want when strumming chords, and I hope you can learn maybe a new voicing or two that will help you learn songs, help you write songs. I'm going to be going through these one at a time, and I also have a PDF of all these chord diagrams linked in the description as well. So that way you can reference that as you work through these. I'm just going to jump in here. Let's get into it. So A minor. And so in the key of G, this is our 2 chord, right? The reason these are color coded the way they are is because those are the same type of chord. And in classical music harmonies or theory study, we call that a function, the same kind of function, meaning that they generally serve the same purpose in a song. To put it short and kind of practical, you could substitute in a song with G, C, and D, you could substitute a C chord for an A minor, and generally the melody will work with that chord as well. It kind of has the same feel, right? So just an example real quick. That sound, right? So here's G, A minor, D, right? It still has a certain sound, right? Or a similar sound. It's kind of like the other side of the coin, or maybe a happy and a dark, or bright and dark. There's different ways to think of major versus minor. We'll talk much more about that in the future, but this is about real practical applications here. So I'm going to go through all these A minor voicings that I like. The typical A minor chord, right? This 3-finger chord. This is a great A minor. I like it. I play it a lot, but I generally find myself playing the second variation, which is A minor 7, not that that matters that much, but it's with an open G string. So I've just got my 2nd fret on the D and 1st fret on the B string. And the intuition here that you can experiment with in other keys is that generally we're trying to borrow notes from the 1 chord and put them in other chords. And that G string is obviously in the 1 chord, it's the 1 of the key. So often in the key of G, I try to keep that open. It doesn't always work open, but it really sounds great here. And I like just this chord has a little bit more modern aesthetic to it, a little bit more subtlety. This is a little bit more plain down the middle, right? So here's in context, maybe G to A minor. And then you go back to original A minor. Nothing wrong with the original. And here's the A minor 7. Right, I tend to find myself playing this, plus it's easier for beginners. 2-finger A minor chord, right? So I would experiment with that general idea of keeping notes from the G chord in other chords, but you're gonna find that theme running through all these voicings typically. So, and also ease, also resonance. Also, we're trying to learn some just options and variations here. We don't want to be the guitarist that has the static understanding of chords, and as if someone says, paint my house, and they say, paint it blue. And we just have 1 can of blue paint, right? We only have 1 color. We want a shade, we want a palette, right? So when I approach a song and there's an A minor in the song, especially what's in the key of G, which is very contextual, right? That means that my subconscious will be helping me pick what chord I want to play that will serve the song the best. So that's the general thinking here that I hope you can kind of keep in the back of your head. So that's the A minor 7, 2 fingers. That's what I'm just kind of calling it for reference. This next one, A minor 7 plus your pinky. So going back to this keeping notes from the G chord in, what if I keep this thinnest string from the G? In any of these G voicings, we tend to play this thinnest 3rd fret, right? So I want to add that to the A minor 7 I just played. I really like this one, right? It's really pretty. So imagine a song now, that could be the focal point. I could have a song going G, C, A minor, right? And keep that on the top. And that's almost like a melody to our chord. Even if you're just playing rhythm guitar and just playing chords, that is kind of what sticks in the listener's ear, is that top note, right? And also how resonant is the chord, right? Is it this? Is it like, and I'm picking my whole hand up, which I'm really trying to avoid. That's a big reason I'm making these videos, is to help guitarists not do that as much, and to maybe consider going, right? Because if this finger stays down, it's just gonna ring. Beautiful, right? And I have all this nice little subtle movement in the chord. Okay, so that's the third one there. And then finally we have A minor 9. So this chord is kind of a little, not in open position. Open position is kind of around here, 3 or 4 frets, usually about 3 or under, using open strings. That's kind of what open position chords or scales mean. And this one's gonna be moving up a little bit, but I couldn't help not put it on this list. And it's a 5th fret on the D and 5th fret on the G. You can use any 2 fingers to play this. I might use my 3rd and 4th finger. And this is a really cool chord, right? Because we're kind of playing on something here. We have the 3rd in the chord. That C is playing against the B, which is that 9. All right, the 9 is the same as 2. It's kind of confusing because 8 is an octave and 9 is 2. Right? So that's really nice. And that B string, let's say I'm using a G voicing with the B open. That could kind of be a common note there, right? I could even add my pinky. I could combine these two, right? Pinky, I could do plus pinky on the A minor 9. Right? Really nice color there. And A minor actually has many more options up the neck. Because we have an open A, I can kind of get creative. What's some other ones? Right, I can kind of add notes. So you can kind of find some more variations when chords have open root notes, and that helps us go up the neck a little bit. You could even do some like lick ideas. This is a little bit more advanced, but you could go like, play some thirds down the neck, right? Once you learn some of these thirds and use your ear to help you. So there's lots of options there, but this A minor 9 has just so much color and some crunch to it, right? Which is really nice, right? I really dig that. So, okay, that's all my A minor sounds. And I will reiterate here, a little PSA, I'm thinking all these sounds and voicings I'm showing you are contextual to the key of G for me. This comes back to a central theme here. We're trying to think contextually always. Pretend I'll go with the house painting analogy, and I know literally nothing about house painting. Let's say that I'm in the Northeast, and I know that people like a certain shade of blue, right? Kind of that, whatever the. I believe I saw a lot of blue the last time I was in the Northeast. So that might be in my mind when someone says, I want a blue house. I want my house painted blue. I don't want to just go in with like, oh, I know blue, right? And just kind of not be sympathetic or contextual to the song. I'm always thinking, oh, that sounds like really open, or it sounds really not open, right? It's got this really kind of like straight ahead, kind of like really closed off sound. That's totally fine too. We can always do that. We can always do the typical, right? And I can combine them for a musical effect. Right, I can kind of get creative here. I can move notes around. Ooh, that's nice, right? Right, so we're just trying to get much more flexible. We're trying to think of chords in very easy to erase pencil versus pen or Sharpie, right? Okay, so that's our 2 chord in the key of G. Now our 3 chord, B minor. This chord is not as common. You don't hear this too much, though randomly I heard it, I think, 3 or 4 times while my wife listened to Taylor Swift's new record. I was like, oh, there's a lot of 3 in this. Like, the producers like that sound, going from 1 to 3, right? So the typical on this chord is like a bar chord people often play, something like this, or something maybe even without the root note. I saw in my one of the guitar books I teach out of. This voicing, which is not good, it's 4 strings only. It's missing a root in the bass. It's not full. That's what we're trying to kind of avoid, right? So I approach the B minor, usually when students have this on the more beginner side of things, I give them the second chord, B minor 7. And this is a certain voicing that I like to give them because it's real simple. It's actually part of a D chord, right? And if I kind of move my fingers around and take my index off, put my middle where that was, on the G string 2nd fret, and then now I'm adding a B in the bass. So I have B, or 2nd on A, open D, 2nd on G, 3 on the D, or sorry, on the B, however. And I'm kind of muting the thinnest. You could even have it open. That's really nice. It'd be kind of like a B minor 11. I almost don't even want to say that because it's not about the exact here. I think it's more about the general. Like, oh, I could play this as a 3 chord or a B minor, or this if I want, right? You can always do that. I tend to not promote playing too many bar chords for beginners because I think that often is a kind of resonance killer for many guitarists, unless you want that sound, unless you really need that sound. That's great if you want that. I'm not against bar chords. I have to play them occasionally. If I have, you know, a G flat chord out of nowhere in a song, right? There's just no good way to play that chord. But I might get creative. I might include an open note or something just for a little bit more resonance and a little bit more color, and it doesn't feel like I'm just slapping that, you know, stock can of blue paint on, right? That's just, I think, what we're trying to avoid is that really simplistic, quantitative thinking. It's more qualitative, letting our ears help us out and how we play these chords. So this B minor 7 is great, and it's no thickest, no thinnest. You can mute. I talked about that last time. You can use your thumb if you can get it over. Unorthodox thing, but many guitarists do it, including me. And I'm kind of using my pinky and under my finger on my ring finger. So I really like that one. So let's say it was in G. That sound. Right, A minor. So hopefully not too bad. This is definitely the easiest B minor, I think, in my opinion, it seems to be. Okay, the next one here, B minor 7 with a bar. So this is kind of like this one, but a little bit more open, maybe easier to play if we take our pinky off. So I'm going to get actually this A minor shape, A minor 7 from here, the 2-finger A minor 7. If you move it up and then you can move your fingers around, you get this B minor 7. And I think this is a great sounding chord. Again, if you're more on the beginner side, I would avoid the bar for a little bit. You're trying to really make these chords comfortable and resonant, but it's good. So I like that a lot. You could even do something like this where you play the B minor bar idea, but we don't do the bar, we just do these 4 fingers. And I actually would kind of prefer someone do that at first, because to me, the pressure of the index is a real big resonance killer, and it almost promotes tension, I think, for some guitarists to do a bunch of bar chords. Sometimes I see guitarists doing bar chords throughout a song, and I'm just like, I don't understand how it's serving them, right? If they're going like, if they want this sound, that's great, right? That's like a very kind of, everything's moving. It's very vertical, right? But this, if I'm going from like G to B minor, is a little bit more horizontal. Or maybe this, because that A might be in the D chord, right? That A is kind of a common note with some of the other chords. Or, you know, just experiment, use your ear here. A really good exercise is to pick any of these notes in these chords and sing along with them. So, meaning, like, let's say I'm going, right? And I'm trying to find, what's the melody of this chord progression? You know, melody, right? It's not the melody, probably, unless you're doing like an arrangement, right? If I'm doing, right, Something by the Beatles. I've got a video on that coming out soon. So if it is the melody, then you want to really consider what's on the top. You have to, right? Because you're trying to play two parts at once, essentially. But even if you're just playing rhythm guitar, kind of think about it. Maybe the D is your kind of focus on the sound. That's kind of the melody you're trying to bring out. So this, that's really nice, right? Because that D is really present, and this is an easy chord again. Many people have trouble with this, and I would never tell a beginner to play this chord or this chord. Like kind of dinky, right? Okay, so finally, one more B minor chord down here. This one's really pretty. It's similar to a B minor 7 bar chord, but what we're going to do is actually take the A minor shape. If you use your second and third fingers, middle and ring, move it up 2 frets, and you can add the B, and then I'm going to keep the G open, not fretting, not doing any bar. Isn't that pretty? So again, this is using the concept of let's try it with the G in there, right? Why not? The D is already in the G chord, so that's not adding anything, but that adding a G to a B minor, that's what we call that flat 6. Again, theoretical, so kind of if that doesn't mean anything to you, it's fine. But this is a good 3 chord sound. So if I was like, let's say I'm finger picking and I'm going like, I could use that as a sound, right? And then I could resolve it. I could move it up the neck if I know some other shapes. And we have a little power chord shape in there, as we do with bar chords typically, but that G string's open. And many guitarists have trouble with these at first because they've been programmed to kind of be like boom, 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 and not think a little bit more resonant. So I really like this because that G string could ring, right? And even the D could ring, right? That's common. You can kind of get creative with how you play these chords and try to keep as many notes down as possible. Sticky fingers, if you will. So, okay, that's all the B minor. To review A minor and B minor real quick before we go on to E minor. A minor, we have typical. Nothing wrong with it, right? You can even make this chord sound different by just not strumming all the strings, right? And then we have, all right, my preferred probably right here. I forgot to put my stars, but I put a star right there. That's probably my favorite, is this one. Again, I can leave the thinnest on, but often some of these chords sound really good by excluding a string. Like this note. That might be the hip note to kind of make the focus, right? I hear that movement versus, right? Or there's lots of ways to kind of make that unique. So A minor 7 plus pinky. That's number 3 on the A minors, right? Really nice. Sorry, you can't see the board always. But again, all these are in the PDF. And then finally, A minor 9. This is the one where we kind of get out a little bit. Really like this one. Right, and that one you might not want to do a lot of fingers down here for the other chords you're playing. If you're playing a song in A minor like this, or if you want to use this, you might not want to go to a 4-finger G because that doesn't really follow, right? Okay, so that's all 4 of those. The B minor, we have our typical, which I don't really prefer most of the time unless I need that sound. We have a kind of an A minor shape moved up 2, B minor bar chord. B minor 7, this second one's probably my preferred. This is 2 on the A, open 2, 3. Kind of comes from a D chord. Right. It's really nice and probably the easiest B minor for a beginner to play. And I'll talk more about this. This could work in any case for a B minor, but specifically we're really thinking contextually to the key of G, right? So some songs that use this chord, of course now I can't think of one, but there's a few that will use going from like 1 to 3, or let's say it's like 1, 2, 3, kind of walk up little thing. So that B minor is probably the easiest you could do. And then finally we have 2 more B minor 7s, or B minors. We have B minor 7 bar, a little bit easier than the full bar chord. And you can also play, I think I mentioned this B minor bar chord, you can just kind of play it without doing the bar. You can kind of do that too. You have to do a bar here on the A and the G. So you have to do a little bit of a bar no matter. But that's really nice. And then finally, this B minor with the open G, which is like not doing a bar. This is using like Metallica, right? Lots of sounds, lots of songs use this sound with that really nice clash in there. And that might be a part, kind of a feature of a finger picking pattern where we have like, right? I could even use that shape and start to get a little more outside of the lines, right? Where I'm playing kind of a C chord, where I move the B to C, right? And we call that, it doesn't matter the name of that, right? C add 9, sharp 11. We get real pedantic really quick. We're just trying to keep it real practical. And we're thinking, what's a good sound for B minor? And the more sounds your ear hears, it'll remember, right? The more you can kind of pay attention. Okay, so finally we have E minor. So we have our 6th chord. There are so many ways to play this chord because we have an open root note again, right? So, and the guitar, open, thickest, open 3 thinnest, that's an E minor, right? So this chord is probably the easiest to play on the guitar in general, from the typical form, right? Probably one of the first or second chords I often teach that are often learned because it's just so easy. You could even do take off the D string, have it open. That's like an E minor 7. I don't love that voicing, so those are typical. You probably know it. Our second option, E minor 7, we have a 3-finger voicing here. And this is going to be going back to the idea of borrowing notes from the 1 chord. So if I borrow this D, right, and I can just add that. This is a favorite of like Neil Young, I hear, right? Heart of Gold, I think, uses that sound. So many bands use this, so many artists have used this and found it useful. So again, that's coming from, this note's coming from G. Right, we get this E minor 7. The next one follows very quickly after that, right? E minor 7 with 2 fingers on the top. This is Wonderwall. This is Wish You Were Here. This is so many songs, right? This is really useful because we can go from G to E minor very easily, and we have more resonance, less stuff coming up, more commonality, more melody carrying over. So it's just a win-win, win-win-win. Okay, so finally we have our 4th E minor option, and it is actually something you already know if you've played this B minor with the flat 6 or with the open G. All we're doing is we're going to play this voicing, but with also the open E. So we're going to take this, and now we're going to add, right? This is so pretty too. And this is not something I would teach a beginner per se, but if you're an intermediate guitarist, you might be ready for something like that, right? Where you're now thinking about these commonalities and moving around. So you could have a song with like G, A minor, and then I could go to B minor. Or, you know, I could do lots of stuff where I'm using this A minor. I'm like, oh yeah, I can move this up 2 frets, and I get, you know, even going from A minor to this E minor. Or let's say I'm going from here. I might want to use that D, or from here even. Right, we can kind of abandon some of this, and here I'm taking that voicing, which is open to 4, open 3. Depending on how the power chord kind of shaped there, that 2 frets apart with our index and our ring, that's going to determine whether that's comfortable, right? If you can do that, if that feels comfortable. That's kind of a big hill a lot of guitarists have to go over when they're learning some chords up the neck and movable chords. So to review E minor, this won't take long, but we have E minor, open, E minor 7 with 3 fingers, we're adding the D. Again, you can keep the thinnest open. You could not exclude it. Nice. We have E minor 7 with 4 fingers. So many songs use this, like I said, Wonderwall, other songs. That one's capo too, but it uses the same sound. So, and we have all that resonance, right? That's in the pantheon of of 4-finger chords from G, C, and D, right? Would that have all this common note there, right there. And finally, we have E minor 9, which is this one. And E minor can be played all over the guitar. You can kind of just experiment. I would take maybe an E minor, move it around. And this is something I learned from Julian Lage, or I heard him talk about this jazz guitarist that's like maybe the best jazz guitarist alive, or the most inventive, at least to me. But he'll just move around notes in a chord and get into other territories really quickly. That's kind of beyond this lesson. But move around this and see, or move this around, however. You could move it around, and some of these are gonna be really dissonant, but you can kind of find some cool sounds like there on the 5th fret. That sounds cool, right? That's nice. That uses that. I'm just kind of doing this by instinct. I'm not thinking about the note names. And because I have an E in the bass and I have 3 thinnest open. So this is extremely forgiving. And again, I can do the same thing with the A minor 9, right? Moving up thirds. I could take other intervals and move them around, and it all sounds like E minor, which is really cool. Was that like that's like Drive, I think, right? By Incubus, I think. Something like that. Maybe I'm wrong. But that's how people find these, right? Is the experimentation and really trusting our ear. It's kind of like, back to the paint analogy, you know blue when you see it, right? And you'll know E minor when you hear it, right? You'll be like, okay, what if I move this up to 7th fret? That's cool. I mean, that note's kind of weird. Like E minor 11, something like that. And can you just kind of get creative here. So these are kind of good opportunities to maybe go a little off book and really do the work we need to do, which we need to kind of give our ears some input and to start to get under the hood a little bit and start to think a little more flexibly, and we're thinking about these big boxes of sounds in a certain key. And I can't tell you how many songs I've played in the key of G, right? So there's a lot of context here that you can really exercise. And not only in the key of G, A flat, capo 1, A capo 2, B flat, capo 3, B capo 4, C capo 5, you can even go higher. So all these still work in those different keys and key centers. So, okay, I want to wrap it up there. I will be back next week with another lesson on the general kind of theory behind this and how to apply that to learning songs, how to switch out chords if you're bored of just G, C, and D. These are interchangeable, like I mentioned. I'll talk more about that next time. And also, I'll touch on the 7 chord. It is not common in popular music. You're going to mainly see it in jazz and in classical and maybe in R&B and other applications sometimes, but it's just really not that popular. But I will talk about ways to approach that. And generally, that would be a movable chord. You would like learn a movable diminished chord. Again, it's very tense. It doesn't have a lot of application in popular music in general. So make sure and like this video if you found this helpful, and let me know in the comments if you have any favorite voicings for these that would promote resonance, or just a kind of a weird voicing up the neck. That's cool too. I'll have videos that go over more exotic voicings or lesser used voicings that I like for these chords. But I find myself playing these all the time, and I find students have an easier time with some of these more real-world chords. Not only are they easier, but they typically sound better and they're more resonant. Until next time, I will see you then. Thanks.